There is one movie that you can track to a lot of my history as a musician, and it is 2007's Funny Games, directed by Michael Haneke. I have a song produced by 4am called Funny Games. It's archived on SoundCloud somewhere. That movie is just the craziest ride I've ever been on watching something scary. It is such a real experience that you watch these characters go through. There is like the original one that I think is like as valuable, but the 2007 one and the way he just like redirects it one for one. That's the fucking crazy thing about these movies too. Like this dude took his own movie and just completely recreated it for like an American lens. And I think there's like a lot of power in that.
I'm not going to spoil it for anybody watching right now, but there's a moment involving a TV remote that is one of the most batshit insane things I've ever seen in a movie.
I was literally about to mention the remote scene. It is one of the most important horror scenes in my eyes. It contributed so much to a lot of the character you see in modern horror directors shit. One of the things that Get Out criticizes with the whole like Obama line and stuff, it sort of went inverse when it became such a big smash horror hit. It feels like a lot of people will cite that movie the same way that that character cited Obama, is like, oh yeah, I've seen Get Out. Like Hiroshi Teshigahara's The Face of Another. It is a post-World War II Japanese horror film. It is about a factory worker who gets into an accident that horribly disfigures his face. You sort of see him start to like become depersonalized and just become like an outwardly bitter person because he's without his identity. Everyone in his life treats him different. It's shot in such a way that you like can see this dude's like collapse as it starts to happen. And he meets a doctor about like 20 minutes in, and the fucking set for this like doctor's office is one of the most like hauntingly intricate sets I've ever seen in a horror film. It just feels like a dream space almost. I think it's extremely like remarkable the way that he was able to bring some of these like huge ideas that other people would not want to try in the early ages of cinema. Like there's a scene near the end of the movie where there's like 300, 400 extras who are just like completely faceless. It's just like extremely haunting visual that you know had to be done in a physical way because of the time that this film was created in. He has other films, Teshigahara, that are more popular than this. This is one of the harder ones to get your hands on, but you can find it online and stuff. It's an extremely great view. BioShock is absolutely like one of my favorite single player games of all time. The way that it can carry like such an interesting story in this insanely foreign world and just build it and flesh it out in a way that is just so like simple is fucking special as fuck. There's not a lot of games that can get you immersed in like a completely separate state that you have never been in before, you know? Not only a completely foreign world, but this is like a civilization that is built under here. They have had their own politics and their own drama, and you like come to this place when it's like already gone through all of their shit. You're just like a spectator in a completely alien world. That first time in BioShock when you're like crawling out of the plane and going into the lighthouse and diving into Rapture for the first time, watching that on YouTube as like an 8-year-old gave me the craziest chills I've ever had. It's an extremely special game, especially because the BioShock games that came after weren't as great.
Yeah, were you a fan of Infinite?
Dude, I played Infinite when it came out. I was like 9 years old, 10 years old when Infinite came out. I remember just being a little bit like, damn, like I was disappointed because I was like 10 years old and I was like, it wasn't as scary as I thought it was gonna be. Columbia was just like not the same vibe that Rapture had. Silent Hill 2 remake. I think that Bloober Team is not the right pick, but they can't fuck up Silent Hill 2 at the same time. It's not necessarily a horror game unless you're like a little bit of a wimp, but Dead Rising 2 off the record is one of the most perfect fucking zombie experiences you can get. Like in any medium. You literally get to play in the Dead Rising 2 mall. It's massive. You can fucking just slash through like hordes with like chainsaws and wear like funny shit and craft all this crazy stuff. And you get to do it as like Frank West. You don't have to play the boring ass fucking Chuck Green. I think it's an enjoyable game even if you're not like directly going towards like story stuff or trying to get like immersed in anything, because you know it's still like a pretty high stakes like intense experience if you're getting fucked up. It can create that while still just carrying like this kind of breezy air that a lot of Capcom stuff did around that time, and I think that they've kind of lost, and that I hope they can get back. I really do wonder like what the fucking new Dead Rising game would look like with the Resident Evil 7 and 8 mentality.
Yeah, are you a fan of the Resident Evil games, 7 or 8, or even like going back with like 4 and whatnot?
I fucking adore like all of the new Resident Evil games. I think that 7 was the best like way they could have reintroduced the franchise, because I think that by 6 people kind of just saw it as like a goofy like zombie shooter game, recontextualizing it the same way that it was when it came out like way back before I was fucking alive. I think that was like mad important. Resident Evil 8 staggered a little bit in comparison to 7. It's interesting interesting to see them like kind of take the horror from 7 and be like, what if we take all of this from like a 7 to like an 11? It's interesting because they can introduce a lot more, but at the same time, you know, it loses a bit of that like survival horror stuff and sort of just becomes more like, let's just shoot all this big shit with rocket launchers. But I really like Village still. I'm mad excited to see whatever the fuck they're gonna do next with that. I'm excited for as fuck for Resident Evil 4 remake. If anyone has a fucking Oculus Rift, you owe it to yourself to go play Resident Evil 4 on that bitch. That will make you shit your pants. You can like push them back and you're aiming at them at the same, like physically aiming at these like crazy ass people trying to walk your ass down. That is a special experience VR can tap into that other mediums just are not at yet. That new Guillermo del Toro horror series on Netflix, he built a bunch of like pretty fucking tight horror directors to create like a Twilight Zone style anthology series. They just get like an hour each with all of these different actors. I think fucking Ron Weasley from Harry Potter is in one of them. It sort of carries that same energy that Twilight Zone does, where you can like put it on and kind of like be interested in it. And you know, there's always a scare in store. Creepypasta, everyone should fucking check out Godzilla NES. This dude finds a haunted cartridge of Godzilla on the NES and he just plugs it in and starts playing it. I don't know how the fuck this happened. This fool got like 50 fucking videos or some shit. Some absurd number of parts and entries. This NES cartridge just had like a million levels on it. The story goes on for so long and it gets so like scary and fucking deep. I think that it has like that absurdity that a lot of creepypasta does, which like kind of makes you not really scared of it. But it's just so interesting watching like the way shit all breaks down. And by the end of it, like this dude is fucking like wrestling with a NES controller while a demon's on the screen. That is just like pure creepypasta experience. I thought Pearl was fucking knock out of the park. It's very much just like this single character. The whole film is just like studying her ins and outs. It's got this like really crazy like 50s telecast vibe to it. It feels like you're fucking watching The Wizard of Oz. I love Barbarian too. It subverted my expectations a lot. It's hard to tell those kinds of stories that like Justin Long's character had in that movie, and the fact that they were able to do it in a way that made me like feel like, okay, you know what? They didn't fuck that up.